I'm Dr. Bill Wales, Assistant Professor of Management here at James Madison University, and I study entrepreneurship. So I have an interesting and varied background. I studied originally information technology with a focus on computer science at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I then continued on at RPI to get my master's in industrial engineering, and I concluded with a PhD in management. Upon leaving RPI, I worked at Skidmore College for a year as a visiting professor, and then ultimately this was my first tenure track position as an assistant professor of management here at JMU. So I research entrepreneurial orientation, which is the concept of firm-level behavior. It really describes what does it mean for a firm to be entrepreneurial. And digging down around that concept, when firms are more entrepreneurial or less entrepreneurial, what effects might that have upon their performance and upon other various outcomes within the organization? And I've studied this in a wide variety of different ways, looking at different moderators, which we would refer to in the literature as things that might affect the strength of the relationship, things that might enhance the relationship between, say, entrepreneurial orientation and firm performance, so that when you're being entrepreneurial, you're getting more out of that behavior. And even the basics about what does it actually mean to be entrepreneurial, and that builds upon a rich stream of literature going back more than 30 years, looking at innovation, being tied to risk-taking and proactivity in terms of how you interact with other players in the marketplace. And specifically, if we look at my research, I have found things along the lines about, in small firms, there was an assumption, and there has been sort of this assumption that, you know, always being entrepreneurial is a good thing. The more the better. And what one might find in line with the research that I've done recently is that the entrepreneurship and the orientation, a little bit, is perhaps all that is necessary for the firm to be successful. And there's diminishing returns even to the point where it can be harmful at very high levels, because entrepreneurial orientation ultimately is a resource-consuming strategic orientation. For me, it's fun to be able to boil down what are relatively complex concepts and communicate them to individuals and really bright minds that in using the Socratic method in the classroom develop their own ideas and raise their own questions. And I try to focus on in the classroom that the notion that the question is more important than the answer you have. I mean, in today's society, answers are sometimes very easy to achieve, and the greater insight is going to come from the questions you ask. We know this from the research side very well. Sometimes in the teaching side, I feel like it might get lost, where it becomes too much about information push rather than sparking the interest of the individual sitting in the seat to want to ask the question and pull the information from myself or from other people in the classroom. And creating that Socratic method of dialogue, facilitated and fostered by an applied curriculum, particularly at the undergraduate level, I found to work very well. I believe the Academy of Management itself has been struggling with for the last decade or more. Don Hambrick's a big name in our field, and he's posed the question, essentially asking what is the relevance of management research. And it's not a trivial one. It is very important that what we do as management scholars and business scholars, as part of this greater ecosystem of social science, have something important to say for practitioners. Dealing with firm-level entrepreneurial strategic orientation gives me a moldable part of the economic engine of the company that, of course, top managers care deeply about. So ultimately, my goal is for the top managers to understand a little bit better about how they should and when they should behave entrepreneurially within the company. Ultimately, it comes down to the people for me. My colleagues are my greatest source of inspiration and friendship and They're just truly wonderful people, and the organization that I'm a part of, the College of Business and the greater James Madison University in the Shenandoah Valley area, so if we go up to even the higher level, has just been tremendously supportive and just full of some of the nicest people you could possibly imagine, and it's one of the most beautiful areas of the world that I've had the wonderful fortune of living in my life. So it really comes down to the people for me. I just love the culture here. I love the supportive environment, and that is not necessarily a given when it comes to research-intensive institutions. Well, it's certainly a great sense of personal satisfaction whenever a student comes back after graduation or after going out and trying to attempt a new venture following taking my class. So the emails that I receive and the LinkedIn comments that I receive, if I'm ever having a bad day, I can always go back and read those comments and know that I'm on the right track. In the classroom, I find it to be incredibly engaging.
This video was produced by